Welcome to the Revere Veterans and Community Show under the direction of Nick Boa of the Revere Veterans Service and yours truly of the Revere Allied Veterans Council. Today we have a real special guest. We have a veteran of the Vietnam War. His name is Dudley Farquhar. He was born in 1947 in Newburyport, Massachusetts. But Dudley, before we get into all the stuff you have here, I believe you have a book in there. Would you elaborate on that book, please? And by the way, let me welcome you and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Morris.
My pleasure and my honor.
It's my privilege to be here. Well, I have a collection of Vietnam books, and I actually recently donated a lot of them to my high school. But I just bought this book. It's called That Place, That Time, That War by Marjorie Brown. And in my estimation, it is one of the finest books about Vietnam that has been written. It goes into a lot of talk about the kind of language that we used, which probably would be foreign to other Americans who weren't in Vietnam. But if you were in Vietnam, I would highly recommend you reading this book. The author of the book contacted me a few years ago, and she wanted some information on POW-MIA, that's Prisoners of War Missing in Action from Vietnam, and I sent that information out to her. I had to sign a release form so that she could use it in a book that she was planning. And I had forgotten all about her, and a couple of months ago, I got in the mail her book that came out. So I went on vacation to Gettysburg and read about half of the book, and then I came home and we were on our 25th wedding anniversary, and I finished the book. I also had sent her some photographs that she used in the book, and I sent her a very special poem that I wrote in 1982 in November. They dedicated the Vietnam Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C., and I went down for the festivities, marched in a parade. It was a very emotional week for Vietnam veterans, because I think this was the beginning of the country looking at us in a different light about the Vietnam War. And it really personalized a lot of things, and we saw, you know, our buddies' names on the wall for the first time. And I came home, and about 6 weeks later, I tried to capture in print my feelings about the Vietnam Memorial and serving in Vietnam and coming home. And in particular, it's dedicated to a friend of mine who was killed in action on 18 June 1970. Yesterday was 43 years from that casualty. So I'd like to share with you the poem that I wrote in his memory. And it's dedicated to the memory of Staff Sergeant Robert C. Dawson, killed in action 18 June 1970, Chu Lai, Vietnam. Some people come into our lives and quickly go. Some stay for a while and leave memories on our hearts, and we are never, ever the same. Bob Dawson was more than a soldier in a strange land. He was my friend. Written in 1982 after attending the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. The poem's title is Vietnam Once Again. Was it really that long ago? They called us the flower generation. Children of the 60s, the Beatles, hula hoops, and woo-woo Ginsberg. But along came Vietnam. They sent us to basic training to learn about Mr. Charles. We were young and it seemed exciting. But why don't the faces go away? We left our American bandstand world, but America wasn't behind us. We fought the gallant fight, but weren't allowed to win. Some of us were lucky. We came back. The prisoners of war missing in action can't say the same. The media did a job on us, a portrayal that wasn't fair. The drug addicts and baby killers came home, and we lived with Callie's mistake. For years we hid in our private world, and hoped America would come around. We watched the hotspots with vivid reality, knowing it could happen once again. The war is over, but the battle lingers on. So Washington erected the wall, names on top of names. But one meant so much to me, Dawson. To most everyone, just a name among the thousands. But to his platoon, he was the best. He gave his life for his men. 6 letters on a wall. No thank you. Words don't tell the story. Vietnam, the hurt lives on.
That is a beautiful, sad
Thank you.
poem, Dudley. Dudley, I would like you to explain, before we get into what you have here, you have a big flag of POW-MIAs, and I see there are names listed on there. Would you tell us what they are?
Well, I started, I guess I'll start back in the beginning. When I was in high school, it was in the mid-'60s, and there was a military draft, and the people that were my age at that time didn't have a lot of choices. The military draft was staring you right in the headlights of life, so to speak. And when I graduated from high school, my choices were very limited. You know, you could go to college, you could get deferment for that, you could enlist, you could get drafted, or some chose even to leave the country and go to Canada. Well, I always wanted to be a state cop, and I felt as though if I enlisted in the military and to be an MP, that would be a good proving ground so that when I got out of the service, I could come back and pursue that dream. That dream changed dramatically once I got into the service, but that's another story altogether. So I did enlist. I enlisted in the Army in 1968. I went to basic training, then I went to advanced training for the Military Police Academy. I was, I got my qualified to be an MP, and I got my first duty assignment, which was to be a missile site guard security detachment in Rhodesia. Now, Rhodesia is a country that I didn't have a clue where it was, but I went home on leave, and while I was home on leave before the duty assignment in Rhodesia, I got a letter in the mail saying that my duty assignment had been changed and I was going to San Francisco to work as an MP at a maximum security prison, which was called Presidio. And there's been a movie out about Presidio and a murder that had occurred on the post, with Mark Harmon was the lead character in it. But California for me in 1968 was a rude awakening. It was the 60s, you know. It was free love and marijuana, and it was an age when the Vietnam War was right in the middle of high protest. The Vietnam War was the first media war. It was brought into our lives each evening, 6 o'clock news. You'd see the casualties, and for anybody that was in the service during that time, it was like, if you had an MOS, that's a military occupation specialty, that had anything to do with combat, then it's probably highly likely that at some point in time you were going to go to Vietnam. Now, I was in an MP unit, so I figured I'd eventually go as an MP. That didn't happen. I was there for about a little less than a year's time, and I got caught on a manpower levy to Germany. So they sent a bunch of us that were in the MPs to Germany, and I felt as though, once I get to Germany, I'm going to be an MP once again. Well, that didn't happen. They put me in tanks, had no training whatsoever, in tanks, so it was a very rude awakening. I spent about a year in Germany, and all we did was train all the
Dudley,
time.
can I ask you what part of Germany?
I
Because
was
I was stationed there as a
I was in
soldier.
a place called Schweinfurt, and in World War II, Schweinfurt was the
ball-
location of the ball
ball
bearing
bearings,
factory.
right.
So the people in Schweinfurt were not too happy with any type of military people being stationed in their city, Schweinfurt. But most of our time was spent in Revere, Germany, Weilflicken, and Hornsfels. Those were the three major training areas, and all we were doing was honing up on our skills as tank crewmen. And at that point in time, I was on an M60 tank, which was really not adaptable to Vietnam because it was too heavy. It sank, especially in the rice paddies. But took the training anyways, and actually you go through a tank gunnery course where you do live fire in the day and you do trainings at night, and your crew is evaluated. The driver, the gunner, the tank commander, and the loader. And so it involved a lot of tedious, long days and nights, and I was fed up with it. So I, like a young, foolish 19-year-old, I think I was 19 at the time, volunteered to go to Vietnam. Now, when I did that, I figured I would be an MP in Vietnam because that's basically what I was trained to do. So they did not want to let me go from Germany, and I got Senator Kennedy at the time, my congressman, to write a letter to the people in the Army and saying that here we have a patriotic American, he wants to serve his country in Vietnam, what's the holdup? Within 2 weeks I was on my way home for a leave before going to Vietnam. So sometimes politicians can get what you want, although looking back on it now, I'm not so sure it was what I wanted. But I did go to, well, I went to Seattle, Washington first before I left for Vietnam, and you have in-country jungle training, and you know, they set up mock villages, and you know, they basically give you a 2-week crash course and you know what to expect once you got to Vietnam. And on that, I would just like to say, nothing prepares you for Vietnam. It is a very rude awakening when you get there for the first time. I remember landing at a place called Cam Ranh Bay, and it had nice white sand. And the first day that I was there, they rocketed Cam Ranh Bay. That was a rocket attack, and they did that very frequently because they knew that this was the one of the places that all the plans were landing with the fresh troops from the United States. And the Vietnam veterans that were in country and at the time always called these new troops effing new guys, FNG, effing new guys. And when you were an FNG, nobody really wanted to be friendly with you because you were basically a raw recruit and didn't know anything about Vietnam. And if you made a mistake, you could get your buddies killed. So it was almost like being isolated from the guys that you were with because they didn't want to have too much to do with you. And I remember being the FNG. It was not a very pleasurable experience. So I served. I was in Vietnam for a year. After about 10 months, I was served in an armored cavalry unit, which is made up of. It's basically a mobilized infantry unit. We had tracked vehicles, and we had what they called APCs, 113s. It's an armored tracked vehicle, weighs about 11 tons, and we had Sheridan tanks with us. The Sheridans were not something that I had any idea. I'd never seen a Sheridan tank before I got to Vietnam. But we had Sheridans and we had the APCs, and we would go out for 30 to 45 days at a time and try to find Mr. Charles, which was Charlie, the VC. And it was a very miserable existence, being in the infantry in Vietnam. It was a hard time to survive, and you just basically took it one day at a time, and you know, that's the way you had to look at it. Do everything you can, do it right the first time, and hope you make it to the next day.
Dudley, can I ask you a question?
Surely.
I was looking over at this over here,
Yeah.
and I counted 66 pins on there, if
Yeah.
my arithmetic is correct.
Yeah.
Could you tell us what they all are?
Sure.
Can I take, you want to take it off and show it to the...
This is when I came home from Vietnam in 1970. I actually got married to the girl that I was writing when I was in Vietnam. Got married in 1972, and we moved to a small town in Ipswich, Massachusetts. And we were renting a little 3-room apartment. And one of my neighbors was Inger and Gordon Hardy. And their son was a POW that had got shot down in Laos in 72. And he was the first returned POW from Massachusetts. His remains came home in 1983. But I got involved with a bunch of Vietnam veterans that were from Ipswich, Massachusetts, because they were classmates of this Arthur Hardy, who was the son of the neighbor that lived 3 houses away from me. So that's how I initially got involved in the prisoner of war missing in action issue. And one of the things that we tried to do as Operation Triumph was to make people aware of the fact that although the war had ended, there were still close to 2,500 men that were unaccounted for, either originally as prisoner of war or missing in action, or bodies that weren't recovered. So we felt as though the best thing that we can do to help those prisoners of war was to keep this issue in front of the people's eyes. And one of the ways that we decided to do that is I come up with a design of a 3-flag pin. The 3-flag pin is what you see in front of me. This board represents about 10 years of involvement in this issue, because we did the Massachusetts pin was the first one that we made up, and it had the American flag, the Massachusetts flag, the POW flag, and then a little banner, red, that was red is significant because it's the POW color, and on the red banner it said "Bring them home."
You designed this stuff?
I designed it, yes.
Excellent job. Excellent.
So what happened, and what really became a reality out of these 3 flag pins, is that Vietnam veterans from Massachusetts were buying these pins in large quantities, and people from other states started contacting us and said, "I want to have my state represented on a 3-flag pin." So over a period of 10 years, we did one state at a time, and you had to, at that back in the early beginning of this effort, you had to have a minimum of 500 pins made up for the state that you were wanting to do. So it involved quite a bit of money, because you had to pay for the dye to have the pin made so that they could, you know, mass produce that
Do
pin.
people still buy the mass prints if they
Yes,
wanted to?
they do.
And how do they do that?
Well, the Massachusetts pin is still available. A lot of the other state pins are not available because the dies for the pins have been destroyed. So actually somebody would have to, you know, pay to make another die. At the time, the die cost $90. But then, you know, like I was
Notwithstanding.
saying, you had to have the 500 made up. So what we had to do is we had to get somebody from the different states that was interested enough to invest the money to, you know, to pay for the 500 pins, which at the time was probably the cost to us was a little over $2. We sold the pin for $4, and then we raised money for the National League of Families, which was the organization in Washington, D.C. that was made up of mothers and fathers, you know, sisters and brothers, family members who had somebody that was unaccounted for. And, you know, we donated the money from the sale of these pins to help them and their efforts to receive an accounting for their loved one. So after we did the 50 states, then we did some of all the branches of the service: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, Seabees, Special Forces. After we did those, we did some of the countries that served in Vietnam besides the United States, like Australia and Korea. We did an Ireland pin because there was a big Irish contingent from Boston. And I actually went to Ireland and brought a bunch of pins with me at the time and just, you know, gave them away to Irish people, and they were actually thrilled to have them. But this is the pin board. This is the organization that I was a part of, was Operation Triumph.
Let me just look at that.
So I was just a member of Operation Triumph. Another individual was the president. He took a job change and went to St. Louis and worked for Budweiser there. And I took over the presidency when he left Ipswich. But he was actually a good friend of Arthur Hardy, and he was his classmate. And Arthur Hardy was kind of like the golden boy in Ipswich High School. He was on the fast track. He was a tremendous kid. He went out to the Air Force Academy. He had a class of over 400 individuals, and he was the top 10 in his class. And he was very well liked within his unit. And he was shot down on a mission over Laos. He ejected from the airplane, and they tracked him from the air because he had a beeper in his flight jacket, and it was the policy at the time. First of all, we were not supposed to have people in Laos because Laos was a communist country, but we ran covert operations out of Laos all the time, you know, especially the Special Forces, and these are a lot of the guys that are listed as prisoner of war, missing in action today. So after they tracked Arthur Hardy on the ground, they figured the enemy had captured him and they were moving him because the beeper was moving. And then on the 17th day, the beeper went dead. Now whether they either discovered it or the battery went bad, they don't know. But he was, you know, in captivity for that time. This was 1972. You know, you have to understand the time frame. In 1983, you know, 11 years after his shoot down, we got his remains back to Massachusetts. He was the first prisoner of war whose remains came back to the state. We had 63 individuals originally. You see them on the flag here. These are all the names of Army, Air Force, Marines.
Dudley, excuse me. That flag you mentioned went to West Point?
Yes, it did.
Tell us where it's actually gone all over the
country.
Actually,
the flag itself is a replica. It's a smaller version of a larger flag that we had built. The big flag is, if I can give you a visualization, the large American flag that you see flying from Burger King. You know how big that flag is? Well, we had a flag made to match the size of the Burger King flag, and on the flag we put all the men that were missing and the big words Massachusetts Cares, and we took it to the wall in Washington. We started doing this in 1986 for the first time, and a contingent from Massachusetts. They call themselves the Massachusetts Vigil Society. They go down every year the week prior to Memorial Day, and they set up this flag and talk to people and visitors. You would be amazed at the amount of people that want to have that picture taken next to this black silhouetted flag. And the silhouette represents the missing men who did not come back after the war ended. So Arthur Hardy's remains came back. We had a huge, huge funeral in Ipswich. At the time, I was in the Army Reserves at Hanscom Field, which was an Air Force installation. We were the only Army unit on the Air Force base. And I went and I approached the powers that be at Hanscom Field and said, I'm a member of an organization in Ipswich, and we have an Air Force pilot whose remains are coming back to Massachusetts. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to get all of Arthur Hardy's medals and present them to his mother at the funeral. And the Air Force unequivocally said, no, we will not do that. They did not want to have anything to do with presenting him with medals. So we, Operation Triumph, purchased the medals that he had earned, you know, by being in the Air Force and actually being a prisoner of war, because he was carried as a prisoner of war initially. So we got the medals. We had them mounted in a shadow box with the glass, and I presented them to his mother at the funeral site. They did a missing man formation that flew over the top of the cemetery, and I was talking with Gordon Hardy, the father, about 2 weeks ago, and his mother, his wife, has since passed away, but he told me that was one of her most prized possessions in the world, was her son's medals. From my perspective, it was an honor and a privilege to do that. It was part of what we were as an organization, is that was what we were trying to do, is get an accounting. That's not the type of accounting that we really wanted. We wanted, you know, a live POW to come back home. The reality is that doesn't happen very, very often. But that's why we were motivated to work for Arthur Hardy. He was a local boy. You know, the people that were a part of Operation Triumph, a lot of them went to high school with him. We also had an individual named Lenny Budd from Rowley, Massachusetts, and he was a POW that actually came home after his 5.5 years in captivity, and he came home with during Operation Homecoming, when you saw the American POWs coming off the planes and, you know, running into the arms of their loved ones. Lenny was a part of that grouping of prisoners of war missing in action that came home, and he was from the next town over, from Ipswich, and he was very instrumental because he gave us some identity. He was a POW himself, and you know, he got to speak to groups and organizations as we did. We would go around and, you know, talk to VFWs and DAVs, American Legions, Knights of Columbus, any group that would actually take the time that they wanted to hear what we had to say. We were a volunteer organization, and this was part of the public awareness. So we tried to keep this issue as much as we could in the eye of the public. And one of the big efforts that we had was the POW flag bill legislation. Now, Massachusetts was the first state in the country that made it mandatory to fly the POW-MIA flag from one municipal building in every city and town in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And this passed when Governor Dukakis was governor. But it wasn't something that just flew through the legislature, because there was a lot of anti-sentiment, not only for Vietnam, but for this issue. It was a black flag, and a lot of people, they just weren't for this legislation. But they did finally get it passed, and within 2 years, what we did was we took that legislation and contacted other veterans organizations in other states, and they used our legislation guideline and got it passed in their states. Within 2 years, 27 states had adopted our flag bill and adopted it in their states. And what this did was it gave the POW-MIA issue credibility. It gave it a visual. When you could drive around a state and see these POW flags everywhere, you'd have school children asking, "What's that flag, Mummy?" You know, the POW flag they'd be pointing to, and mom and dad would have to explain to them, that's for the prisoners of war and missing in action who didn't come home.
You have to excuse me now because you got so many terrific things. What I would like you to do is I have a poem by one of our veterans. I also would like to thank Bob and Brenda Doback for bringing the wall to Revere. We lost 6 veterans that were killed in the Vietnam War. I would like you to have the honor to read their names, if you may.
Okay.
Those are them.
EN3 Robert Lawrence Blaze. S. Sergeant Major James Loves Delmont. First Lieutenant Arthur Russell LeGros, Jr. First Lieutenant Alan Joseph O'Brien. Warrant Officer Walter Stanley Olinsky, Jr. GSG-3 Stephen Joseph Penta. And these all are Revere's casualties from Vietnam War.
Thank you. And I have one little letter here that I would like to read. This was written by a World War II Korean veteran who's also does a lot of things for the Vietnam, but I'll shorten the poem. I'll just read the first 2 lines, the last 2 lines. He starts out with, "I left the Vietnam healing war embarrassed and sad that I did not do more for my country as others had. It is now our job to maintain our way of life. It is our job to keep our country safe and secure." And this was written by Charles Macon of the Revere Senior Center. You did a beautiful job. Now, Dudley, you've got so many things here, and we only got about another 20 minutes left, so start with the POW license plate, because that's there, and then elaborate on this, too, because this is a beautiful piece of work.
This wood POW-MIA was actually made for me by a Korean War veteran from New Hampshire, Sal Colella. He has since passed away, but the intricate detail of this is quite amazing. We used this at the Tossfield Fair for close to 15 years. We had a booth there that we were trying to get people to sign. We wanted to get a POW-MIA postage stamp, and it took about 12 years of stamp petition drive to do it, but we did get it, and this was a very visible thing that we used at our booth at the fair. This is actually my vanity plate from Massachusetts, POW-MIA. I've had this since 1988, and it's not. This is an old plate. I have one on my car now that's seen its better days, but it's still out there, and get an awful lot of comments when I'm driving around the state on the highway, and people beep their horns and wave and give me the thumbs up. But it's been a big part of who I am for a lot of years, and I display this plate with a lot of pride. One of the ironies of the moving the wall that heals that came to Revere recently was that one of the guests for the opening day ceremony was a fellow named Tim Sullivan, and Tim Sullivan was actually a POW that came home after his time in captivity, and he was from Lawrence, Massachusetts, and I was familiar with him and his shoot down incident when his plane was shot down. He was a back seater, and I never knew that he had. I never knew, you know, that he came home and he was actually working in the JFK building in Boston, you know, the next town over from where I'm living in Winthrop now. So it was an honor and a privilege for me to actually meet him and speak with him briefly. And he did tell me that he knew that he was going to come home because he found out about the POW bracelets. And I have a POW bracelet here of a fellow that's still unaccounted for. But he said, this is a former POW. He said, I knew, and the POWs that were with me knew, that we were coming home because everybody had not forgotten about us. And people were wearing these POW bracelets all over the country. We were actually selling these for the Massachusetts men, and we've easily sold 10,000 of them, you know, of the bracelets for the Massachusetts men.
Okay,
but for me to actually hear that from him was very, very special.
We want you to talk about the hats, the
Okay.
shirt.
This is actually my bush hat that I wore in Vietnam. It's been through was there with me, been through a lot for the year that I was there.
You people didn't have steel helmets?
No, we
there?
didn't. We didn't use the steel pots too much in the field because they were too heavy and too restrictive, and you had to move and move quickly. So this was the hat of choice, so to speak, and it was a multifunctional piece of clothing. This here is what we called a short timer stick. This is actually my stick, and there was a tradition in Vietnam that when you first got into the country, you had 365 days, and that was like a jail sentence to us. And we always had, we kept a track of the days that, you know, we had to go until we rotated back home. We called it the freedom calendar, and each day you'd mark off a little day, and then when you got to be less than 100 days left, you were what they called a short timer, and that means your time was short, left in country before you got to go home. And short timers have an attitude. They figured, okay, I've made it this far, and I'm next. I'm going out of here. So they all had the tradition of getting a short timer stick, which kind of like projected their attitude. So this is my short timer stick, and it is 43 years old, and I will keep it forever.
Okay, we got about 10 minutes, so we got to get a lot done.
This is actually a design of a sweatshirt that I did that we used to sell to raise money for the prisoners of war, and it has the black wall, which is representative of the Vietnam Memorial. The three fighter planes, that's representative of the missing man formation. The silhouetted one without the green, that's the missing man. Obviously, the POW with the Band-Aid on his head, over his eyes. The eagle with a teardrop the eagle is sad. American flag representing you know, the country that we serve for. The soldiers looking at the POW, and then the soldier with his hand over his head is kind of like dealing with maybe post-traumatic stress. But we use this as a visual reminder that not all the men, you know, came home from Vietnam. This was the front of it with the Operation Triumph. Triumph stands for to release immediately unauthorized POWs homeward. So that was basically our goal, was to bring the men back home.
Yeah, take this one, Dudley.
This is a little humor, little Vietnamese humor here that that we had. This is a radio man's how we communicated with each other in the field, and kind of like a comment on today's, you know, with the kids with their headphones and, you know, not paying attention to what's going on.
Dudley, would you tell us about the coffee you got there? That's the
Yes,
micro-
currently I'm involved in a project called Operation Platoon Mom, and this effort sends coffee and cookies to our troops in Afghanistan. I got involved. I was living in Methuen at the time, and there was a mother that lived at the bookstore that worked at a bookstore, Borders, and the company was selling coffee so that she could send coffee to her son in Vietnam. And I got involved with her. Her son was a member of the 101st Airborne. They had been to Iraq 2 times, and this was their 3rd time. The unit was their 3rd time in Afghanistan. So during the year that they were there, we were sending them coffee from Starbucks at the time when we first started. Well, Starbucks was charging us like $10 a bag for this coffee, which was very expensive, but the GIs on the ground really liked it because it had a little kick to it, and that's what they needed to you know, get them started in the morning. But then I became aware of a company out in Orange, Massachusetts that made this is the coffee that they made, and it's a special blend of coffee. This company, that's all they do is they sell different brands of coffee, and this Mocha Sumatra is the brand that it was their most popular selling brand, and we found that out. So I contacted the president of this company, told him who I was, what I was doing. He donated some coffee to us. So we started sending this coffee. This coffee became so popular because it was something that they really enjoyed, and it's strong. So we have an effort now through the Telephone Pioneers of America. They're a nonprofit organization, and they have been very supportive of veteran and veteran-related issues over the year. I retired from AT&T, and the Pioneers are the recognized charity of AT&T. So.
Excuse me, can people donate money for you to get this coffee?
Yes, they can. This is I wrote this up. This is for coffee donations, and this is, you make the check out to Telecom Pioneers 131. That's the name of my chapter, and send it to this address. That's the treasurer of this organization. We are a nonprofit organization, and we've been involved in helping veterans for a lot of years. So, and this, I actually brought a photo of the Marine that is. This is the 2nd year that we've been sending coffee to his unit. This picture was taken in Peabody, Mass, because I was working at a boys' shelter for security at nights, and during this individual's deployment, he was writing us, and the boys in the shelter were making homemade cookies, and we would send him the cookies with the coffee. He promised to me that when he came home on leave, he would come to the shelter and talk to the boys, and he did. He did a tremendous job. He came. He gave me this plaque here, which is a replica of the Iwo Jima Memorial, the Marine Corps, and he gave us a Marine
beautiful.
Corps flag for the shelter that we fly to this day, and he was a man of his word, and I just heard from him. They are right in the middle of it now. He's about 8 months into his well, actually, he has been deployed 8 times between Iraq and Afghanistan. So he's about 8 months through his tour this year, and we continue to send him coffee. The Pioneers do give me a budget for the year for the coffee. That ran out last month. They're going to give me some more money. But if anybody would like to donate, the bags of coffee are actually $7 a bag. But if you want to donate any amount of money, whatever you donate will be used for the coffee only, and we will, you know, continue to send it until the individual comes home.
Right, Dudley, excuse me. This is a terrific book on the wall that I looked at. You heard about Dan Bullock, the young kid that got killed in Vietnam?
Yes.
Would you just tell us real quick about them in the book, but especially about Dan Bullock?
Well, this book here came out for the 25th anniversary of the wall, and it's basically a book that has a lot of stuff that people leave at the wall as a memory. And I bought the book because I wanted to show you the two big flags that actually go down to Washington. This is right above the Vietnam Memorial with the Washington Monument in the background. And these flags are the ones that the tourists come up and want to have their picture taken next to the American flag or next to the POW flag. And you know, we talk to people about the issue, about the men whose names are on the flag, and it continues to be our way of giving back to the issue and making people aware that you know, although the war ended many years ago, there are still mothers and fathers in this country, brothers and sisters who don't know what happened to their loved ones, and this is our way of continuing the public awareness, ongoing efforts to account for their loved ones.
Okay, Dudley, we got 5 minutes left. I'm going to turn it over to you. You can speak on anything you want, so take it away.
Well, I guess to wrap it up, I would say when one American is not worth the effort to be found, we as Americans have lost. This is not a political issue. This is a humanitarian cause. These men left this country, served it honorably, served in captivity, and now, all these years after the war has ended, they're not home. We want them home. Ideally, we want live prisoners back home. The reality of the situation is that's probably not going to happen now because of the passage of time. But we want their bodies. We want their bodies back so that they can be buried in their hometowns, and mom and dad, sister and brother can go to the cemetery and know that they're there. Their loved one is right there, not unaccounted for.
Right, Dudley. First, let me say thank you for coming up on the show. And I'd like to ask you a question. You have a lot of things we didn't get to today, but we'd like to have you back in the fall around September. Would that be possible?
That would be fine with me.
Well, I got your promise.
You got it.
And we'll have you back, and may God bless you. And I got to tell you, Dudley, this is one of the fantastic, best shows we've had on for a long time on veterans. And you being a veteran and helping the veterans, may God bless you again.
And I got one message to all the Vietnam veterans that may be watching this. Welcome home.
Thank you. And we salute you out there, too. And may God bless you, Dudley. God bless all the veterans of Vietnam. Our troops are overseas now, the United States of America, and to the people of Revere. And thank you all for listening. Till next time. And Dudley, salute you again, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It was an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
It was my pleasure to be here.